There's a bit of a wave, I think, of newer businesses that have purpose and impact baked into them from the outset. Certainly a proportion of consumers and society at large just have a bit more of an expectation that that's the way that modern independent, innovative brands will be built.
Hello.
Hi, and welcome back to another episode of our podcast here at The Good Side, where we explore some of our takes on the industry, some of what makes us special as an agency, and just some of what makes us tick as people.
Brilliant.
And today we're going to be looking at purpose and ethics and responsibility within business, and really talking about, I guess, how that shows up in our work and defined a little bit about who we are, I think.
Lovely. It's one of my favourite topics. I will take us back to the formation of The Good Side. We talked about it a little bit in terms of wanting to bring two disciplines together, but the other reason we made this business, right, is that we wanted to prove that you could create a commercially viable business that also had a really clear mission and a clear purpose and was values-based and was a good place to work.
Yeah, I think also we were inspired by a few other people who were doing a similar-ish thing, but in some slightly sort of like related disciplines. So people in creative work and in comms who were also trying to take a more kind of socially responsible and environmentally responsible perspective on the work they're doing. So that makes me think of people like Nice and Serious, who, you know, we love
Their stuff.
Good Business, who also do kind of some interesting kind of consulting work around this sort of space. Greenhouse Communications, again, who we kind of love, who do really nice work around sustainability in comms and in PR. I think it was really inspiring to see other people within, as I say, some related disciplines. You're just sort of trying to do things a bit differently, really.
It is really difficult, it turns out, isn't it, to like have a really true, good purpose and have these values that sort of underpin everything that you do, and to then make that true is actually really challenging.
One of the things that I think is interesting about the space is that, you know, you talk about us having kind of built the business to always have, I guess, a purposeful kind of impact perspective on the way it does things. But I don't think we actually talk about it very much in terms of what we actually do. And I think it's actually, we spent a long time developing the model and then building some kind of metrics for ourselves around how we kind of hold ourselves accountable to not just sort of like talk about kind of being purposeful and lovely, but actually having some kind of some clear impact. So, I mean, I'd love you to explain for our many listeners how we approach being a responsible business.
Yeah, I'd like to explain it because it's really interesting and it's been a really fun journey trying to make it real. And, you know, we have a clear purpose right from the start, which was platforming marginalised voices and giving opportunities to underrepresented groups. But it was actually going through the certification process for B Corp that really, I think, helped us understand how to really make that actually concrete in specific ways. And we've always had this commercial non-profit split, but now we have a really clear target around that being 70%, 30%. And we also do 15% discount automatically for all non-profits. And then in terms of how we spend our profits, so we have a model which we deviate from a little bit because we've invested a lot of money into a feature film that is to support the movement to decriminalise homosexuality. But the model is that it's 2% of our profits go to charity, and the team, we collectively decide which charity or charities that is. 20% of our profits goes back to the team itself. And then another 20% of our profits will go to purposeful projects. So that could be something that is beneficial to the community and the environment around us. It could be a project that the team really want to do because it would be good for them and good for their skills. And then the rest of the profits goes back into the business as a cash base to keep it safe. And then we also do paid internships every year for people from underrepresented groups within the industries that we work in. And all of that is like really super clear, and we are definitely purposeful, you know, and I feel really, really proud of having made all of that happen, because it is quite challenging making a commercially viable business that has all of these elements as part of it, and it is a constant process keeping that true.
One thing that I really love about it is that we are, literally putting our money where our mouths are in terms of saying, we do have this discount, we do have a ratio around profit to purpose in terms of clients, and then we do have this pot that we can use for social impact, as you articulated so clearly. And I think what's so nice, especially about the last bit, is that it does mean that the team can have a bit of autonomy around helping decide what impact looks like. What does that feel like, and it gives us a chance to really be innovative. And you mentioned the film, and I think it's just really nice to be able to have that flexibility to take some risks around things that we think are worth doing that don't necessarily have a client, but just things that we kind of care about ourselves.
And all of that is really the tip of the iceberg. I could go on for days on this topic. A lot of organizations, I think, do a well-being and inclusivity survey, but we've been doing it for years and years and years, and we have a clear target. If we drop below a certain percentage, that we clever quant people in-house who can work it all out, and if we drop below a certain target, then it rings alarms, So there's just loads and loads of stuff that we do to try and be good.
I think if you also expand out from us and the kind of foundations that we've built, there's a bit of a wave, I think, of newer businesses that have purpose and impact baked into them from the outset. So I'm thinking about people like Tony's Chocolonely, whereby their fair trade policy is a really clear part of who they are, and the quality of the product is really high. Something like Patagonia, where kind of sustainability and environmental consciousness is built into the brand from the outset, or Veja shoes, where they're these kind of modern, kind of fairly premium brands that have like a really clear point of view on their own kind of social and environmental impact. And it feels like there's a bit of a moment in time happening where certainly a proportion of consumers and society at large just have a bit more of an expectation that that's the way that modern independent innovative brands will be built. And I think we've sort of responded or been part of that kind of movement.
So do you think, it sounds like from what you're saying, there is a really clear link between quality and purpose as well?
I think that definitely can be. I think there's an interesting conversation about like sort of notions of premium that I think shows up in this space as well. And a brand that I always think about when I think about the idea of sort of premium and purpose coming together is Apple. They've really made great strides to differentiate themselves around notions of trust and safety. So, they really kind of lead the field in terms of data privacy and data safety and sort of trust around that, as well as I think trust around the kind of reliability of the product and the kind of user experience. And I think that, obviously they're a premium brand in their category, but really I think what they're doing now is to really think about what does that mean to be premium. And I think differentiating themselves around kind of purpose and around kind of ethics is an interesting place to sit. How do you think it plays out in terms of talent, in terms of attracting people?
Well, I think that it really helps. I think people really want to come and work for us, like especially in the last few years, that's really picked up. We get a lot of people approaching us who want to work with us because they can see that we're purpose-led. In fact, one of the tricky tasks is explaining to people that we are 70% commercial and 30% non-profit, because there's a perception gap there sometimes, which is really fascinating in our work because we work so much in understanding audiences and people and behaviors to inform brand positioning and brand strategy and brand perception. And we've had our own journey with that, haven't we, about how people perceive the good side. I think there was a time where, because it's hard to talk about commercial work publicly, people assumed that we just did work with non-profits, foundations and charities and work just in that space, which is not the case. I think we've done a really, really great job at creating a purpose-led business, but you can see as it grows how easy it is for it to just like go off track a little bit and for it to maybe not always be true. And so we're so desperate to be true to what we've actually formed. We never knew how to run a business. We made it up as we went along, right? That is why we have brought in Catherine, who can help us really just... The way I describe it is that we've done this like 80% of the work to create this business, and there's this final 20% where we're like, we don't really have all of the skills to do that final 20%. So we brought Catherine in, didn't we, to help us do that, which is really about looking after the talent that we have, attracting more great talent, doing great work, and being purposeful all the time in everything we're doing.
it's recognizing that that is a full-time job, that running a business is a full-time job. And I think, we're very keen to actually be able to really kind of add value in the spaces that we know how to add loads of value, which is, in the ideas, in the creativity, in the kind of thinking, in the kind of client relationships, and pushing the practice forward, while she can really focus on, making sure that, we do stay true to the model. So I think that's a really nice kind of way of thinking about how she kind of comes into that. I think when you talk about talent, I think for me, it's about differentiating between being a non-profit and being a socially responsible business. And we are the latter, and we always kind of have been, as you say. But I think helping people understand that can be about making money and then using that money to do things that are impactful. It doesn't have to be about always delivering social change in the work that you do, and I think a lot of our work is super commercial work, but we recognize that we do that work in order to generate this money that we can use to affect change. And I think that's a nuance that people have to kind of come on the journey a little bit with to understand.
Yeah, and that's why that model around how we spend our profits is so vital, because it's real and it shows value, not just in terms of how we spend our profits, in terms of how we interact with the world and make the world a better place, hopefully, maybe in small ways, maybe in big ways, but also that there is a benefit for the team as well. I think being purpose-led has been quite zeitgeisty in the last few years, hasn't it? But there's quite a lot of chit-chat around purpose being dead. Do you think that's true?
I definitely think it's a big conversation in LinkedIn right now, or big conversation. It's certainly a conversation in LinkedIn right now. I think what's happening is that we are moving out of an era of purpose-led advertising, where there was this kind of this notion of kind of purpose washing that was going on, whereby every ad you were seeing had some sort of like comment on the world. And I think what's happened is that businesses and their partners and customers have started to realize that actually it's about kind of real impact and where you put your money that really matters. It's not really about how you talk, it's about what you do. For us, it's about designing that model about how we use our money and how we kind of behave responsibly in the world. And I think that's what people are looking for, and that isn't going anywhere. I think it's really interesting that where the conversation about whether purpose is dead is happening is like in a small pool of advertiser strategists. And what they're talking about is, what are we going to do in our work? Are we going to still have these kind of messages being central? And I think what we're talking about is moving away from narrative into genuine impact.
Yeah, well, that makes sense, doesn't it? Because we're business to business, so we can make that decision about being purpose-led. But if you're actually selling products and services to a customer, to people have actually got really wise to it. They can see, they can smell the bullshit, basically, can't they, when you're purpose washing?
Yeah, I think that's true. The other thing that I think has happened, and certainly the way that we talk about it when we do strategy work, is there's a difference between brand purpose and social purpose. Like, brand purpose is really about, like, why do you exist in the world? And brands can exist for all sorts of reasons. They don't have to exist to change the world. They don't have to exist, to solve a kind of social problem. But then social purpose does really have to be about your kind of impact on the planet. So, we find it really useful to pull those two things apart. And I think as soon as you pull them apart, you can understand that brand purpose can be about many more things than sort of changing the world. But really, social impact has got to be about, delivering something real for communities and for the planet.
Yeah, because brand purpose can be about changing people's experiences, can't it? Which is completely different.
So it feels like the central point of what we've been talking about today is that purpose and social responsibility are about moving away from talking and into real action.
Yes, well, I guess that means we shouldn't just sit here chatting about it all day, should we? We're not going to make impact being here. We'll just go off and do stuff, right?
Sure.
All right. What is the purpose for the rest of your day?
Oh, writing slides.
Right. You made it sound boring.